with CM Punk said to be returning soon and more. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report for July 18th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. Talking to El Brunch Day WWE, Tiffany Stratton mentioned her in-ring debut for 205 Live back in November, saying, "I had my trial for WWE back in May, and I didn't really hear anything for a couple of weeks, and then I got the email about a month after my trial and it was over Zoom, and I was very happy. It was a very good moment. I feel very good being in NXT 2.0. I did not expect to be put on to TV so quickly. I started at the PC and at the end of August, like the beginning of September, and I debuted at the middle of December, and I did not expect that to happen. So I am very blessed, and I feel very fortunate that I was able to debut so quickly, with only being at the PC for a couple of months." Recalling the start of her WWE career on NXT, Bianca Belair touched on having doubts over not winning the title on that brand. "I did question myself on NXT. I go out there and talk about being the EST of WWE, and that's where I started in NXT. I feel like that was my home, and I felt like there I was constantly trying to prove that I belonged there. I placed so much validation with that NXT women's title, and it was so many times when I thought, okay, this is my time, and it never happened. I was like, man, I want to prove and show that I'm worthy, and that I'm good, and I'm capable of being the face of NXT and being a champion." With it announced on Smackdown that WWE Hall of Famer Jeff Jarrett will be the special guest referee for the match between the Usos and the Street Profits, it was pointed out why this was done on Wrestling Observer Radio. Its name. The deal is, it's Nashville. From a national audience standpoint, whatever. But it's Jeff Jarrett, Again, the Jarrett family in Nashville goes back 55 years, and Christine even further. But she was not a public face, but Jerry, and then Jeff were part of that market for wrestling forever. So it's, I can see for the Nashville market, and he can go do promotion. They still got a lot of seats to fill. I get it. I definitely get it. I don't know if this is just a one-timer or if they're going to introduce him as a regular character, but I was very surprised when they announced Jeff Jarrett that he didn't come out. On his Click This podcast, Kevin Nash recalled a recent visit he took to an NXT taping, where Shawn Michaels made a comment about what fans want with today's style of wrestling. "I went down and I watched an NXT taping. I said to him, slow down. He just looks at me and goes, it's not the style anymore. You just have to accept that. The style is the style. If you go out there and do test of strength, people will walk out of the arena. They are operatively conditioned now to do this. The fans want to see this. They want to see a spot fest. That's great if that's what the fans want. I particularly don't." During his brief time as executive director of Monday Night Raw, Paul Heyman had many stars he was looking to push and take care of, which he mentioned a theory during Smackdown. Dave Meltzer discussed the real-life situation inserted into this segment, saying it was also interesting the insider thing because Heyman went to Moss and he went to Theory, and he brought up how he was responsible for both of them getting their big break, which is actually a true story. Because if you remember back when Paul Heyman was in charge of Raw, well, Vince McMahon was in charge of Raw, but Paul Heyman was in charge of Raw in name. Two guys who he brought up were Theory, who they then sent back down because they didn't think he was ready, and then Heyman handpicked him when somebody got hurt. He picked Theory to be the replacement. And then with Moss, you remember, Moss came in, beat Ricochet, they were going to give Moss the big push, and then Moss, I think, had a family issue or something and went home, probably having to do with COVID, and when COVID came in, he was gone. I don't know the reason exactly, but it was a family thing. He kind of disappeared, but Heyman was going to give Moss a big push. He liked the guy's look, liked the guy's athletic ability and everything. It was just in both cases with Theory, Vince didn't think he was ready and sent him back down, and with Moss, it was the timing thing. He did actually see something in both of those guys right away. Talking to Sports Illustrated, Claudio Castagnoli noted that his main goal in AEW is to become world champion, which he admitted could cause harm, saying, "This is my pursuit, the main event and the World Heavyweight Championship. I've seen that pursuit destroy people. Those sacrifices ate them up, always seeking one more run. I've never sacrificed my authenticity or integrity. My destiny is my journey. I want to take fans on that ride and hopefully win the world title along the way." On AEW Rampage, Andrade was ringside supporting Private Party during their loss against the Lucha Bros. According to the Wrestling Observer, they keep wanting to do that match with Andrade and Rush against Penta and Phoenix, and Andrade still isn't ready. Any week now, this match will happen, and they will kick off their new feud. You can see the feud's happening, so they're going to be doing that. Pac's going to be defending his title, in Europe, so that's what those guys are going to be doing. They've been feuding forever with House of Black. Looks like it's going to be Brody King and Malachi against Sting and Darby going forward, so now they're in different directions and, whatever. Speaking of plans, the Observer would point out what is next for former WWE star Parker Boudreaux after he joined Ariya Daivari's stable in AEW. Tony Khan had an idea for a trio called the Trent Busters, and the idea is that Ariya Daivari is now Ari Daivari after Ari Emanuel, owner of UFC and of course super agent and everything, big time celebrity, and the idea is that on July the 4th, I believe, his trust came in and now he is rich. The first thing he did, if I was super rich and came into money, the first thing I would do is recruit Slim J. So anyway, he brought in Slim J, who's a good wrestler. He's been around for a long time, never really got a shot anywhere. But anyway, he was brought in. And then the third member of the group that was brought in is Parker Boudreaux, who was Harland in WWE, who was obviously recently fired. So they debuted on the Dark Tapings, which was yesterday, and I know Tony Khan was very excited about it, so there's that. No decision has been made whether it would be for Ring of Honor or AEW. There's so many acts in AEW. Ring of Honor, not as many acts, obviously. And Ring of Honor's got 5 matches on the pay-per-view, which is a week away. So they probably need to add maybe to get a 3-hour show and a 1-hour pre-show, which I think is what they're doing. They probably need to add several matches and several more people. You got Brian Cage, you got Gates of Agony, Leona and Kwan, and I don't know who else really as far as who's going to be there. Before he became the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, The Rock was known as Rocky Maivia, a smiling babyface that fans hated. On Busted Open Radio, Mark Henry revealed how much Rock hated his first gimmick, saying he fought that tooth and nail to move away from his original gimmick. It got to that point where he was like, "Man, I wish I could get to the quarterback because I will go back and play football." He hated it. He wanted to quit. It got to the point where he finally said, "Hey, let me try some stuff." And when he started trying it in the car. He was like, "Hey Mark, what did you say your last name was?" And I was like, "Fool, you know my last name. It doesn't matter what your name is." When it comes to plans for Kevin Owens, who has been out of action recently, Sean Ross Sapp reported that Kevin Owens hasn't been seen on WWE programming in nearly a month and was pulled from the June 26th episode of Raw. Fightful Select has learned that as of Sunday night, a KO show segment was planned for Raw for July 18th. Thus far, Owens has not been advertised by WWE as appearing on the event. As often happens in wrestling, plans can be changed. One instance occurred last week when Elias was planned for Raw before that element was nixed. As mentioned, Owens was absent from the June 26th episode of Raw, where he was set to take on Elias in a Money in the Bank qualifying match. He would appear at the NHL draft a couple of weeks later. On Talk Is Jericho, pro wrestling star and former governor of Minnesota Jesse Ventura spoke about the possibility of running for president in 2024. Now it's more serious than ever. I dabbled with the Green Party 2 years ago till I found out they were split and were completely dysfunctional, but I've been communicating and working very close now with Andrew Yang. And Andrew Yang is the real deal, and Andrew Yang is forming what's going to be called the Forward Party. We're calling it that because we want to look forward into the future. We don't want the past, we don't want anything to do with the Democrats and Republicans. They're the past. This is going to be the forward party, or to give ballot access and candidates on the slate, and have a presidential candidate and a convention by the 2024 election. And I'll tell you why, Chris. Right now, 60% of the country doesn't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Taking to Twitter, AQA, who challenged Jade Cargill for the TBS title in February, has announced that she is stepping away from the business, writing, "I want to take this time to say thank you to anyone who has ever cheered for me, supported me, bought merch, had me on your podcast, or wrote an article about me. Those who sent loving messages, made fan art, gave me a hug during a meet and greet, or a high five on my way to and from the ring, promoters who booked me, opponents that stood across from me, and my trainers for teaching me everything I know for. I wouldn't have made it this far without all of you. At this time, I've decided to step away from professional wrestling for the immediate future. For the past few years, both mentally and physically, I have not been in a great place with wrestling, and silly me, I kept pushing through because I didn't want to be seen as weak, but it only sucked the fun out of every opportunity I had. I hope during this time I'll be able to reflect deeply and see what path is best for me. Thank you AEW for granting me this time. Until I see you all again, much love." Giving an update on CM Punk, who successfully underwent surgery to repair his broken foot, Dave Meltzer said Punk should not be long before he returns. I mean, not this month. Probably not August, but perhaps all out, perhaps full gear. I think it'll be one of those shows when he's back. With him having been out of action since he was kicked out of his faction, Edge is expected to be back soon, as Fightful reported. WWE is planning to bring Edge into New York City for next week's Raw from Madison Square Garden. Thus far, we can't confirm if Edge will actually appear on the July 25th Raw MSG show. However, we can confirm that WWE has internal plans to bring him into the show, which will serve as the go-home Raw for Summerslam in Nashville. Promoting his final match for July 31st, Ric Flair hinted at who the mystery opponent will be, saying, "I'm coming after one of your own," and tagged Raw. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.